Hello guys, welcome back. So today I'm just gonna do a couple projects that I've had laying around, starting with this wood block. I actually have four of them, so I'm gonna knock out two of them. I'm gonna go ahead and decoupage all four sides of my block just to create a riser. I'm not gonna put any legs on it. I feel like it has enough height. So I'm going to go ahead and separate the layers of my napkin. I think this was like a 2-ply. I got it from Home Goods, I think, last year. So I'm going to start out by putting a thin layer of Mod Podge on my block and then layer my napkin right over that. Once I get my napkin down, I just pat it very easy with my fingers to try not to tear the napkin. Then I use a plastic glove that I had on hand because I didn't have any plastic nearby, so I just used this glove and it worked just fine, just to smooth out some of the wrinkles. Then just to take the extra napkin that's around the edges, I just use a sanding block just to sand it off, and that gives you a very clean edge. And I will continue that on all four sides. I do try and connect the napkin like where I sanded it off just so it could have a good flow. But I don't stress too much about it. I just keep going. Then I'm just going to add some crackle using this IOD stamp. It's called Vintage Textures. I don't even keep this one in the package anymore because I love to use it on everything. So it just stays here on my desk. I don't even put it in the package because I love it that much. And I did go ahead and do this on all four sides of my block. And just to age the edges up on my block, I'm just going to go ahead and use this Distress Oxide from Hobby Lobby. And this item as well is one that I keep very close by on my desk. I love to use this on everything. Next up, I picked up this cutting board from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to go ahead and use the same napkin. I'm going to decoupage it right over this cutting board. And to start off with a good white base, I'm just going to give this a coat of white paint. This is just going to help bring out the colors in whatever paper or napkin you're using to decoupage with. It's just going to bring out the colors and make them a little bit more vibrant. Once that dries, I'm going to go ahead and put a thin layer of Mod Podge. And then I'm going to go ahead and just lay my napkin right over that. I'm going to use my fingers just to pat it down without tearing my napkin. And then I'm going to use the plastic glove that I had on hand, and I'm just going to smooth out some of the wrinkles. And again, as I did with the blocks, I went ahead and stamped the crackle from that IOD stamp. So to add a little detail to my board, I'm going to go ahead and use this IOD mold. I'm just going to use the little leaves. I'm going to go ahead and coat them with some baking powder just so it releases the clay a lot easier. I am going to be using the clay DOS, and I get that at Hobby Lobby, but you can also purchase it on Amazon. So I go ahead and press my clay into my mold, and with those little micro edges that these molds have, it's easier to take off all the excess from just rubbing it right off the top. And then just by bending the mold, it releases the clay. And since I did add some baking powder, it releases it a lot easier. And speaking of IOD, I did order a few of the things that came out in the spring collection. I just received them, so I will be doing a video coming up just to show you what I did with them. I'm so excited. I feel like this release was like the best one yet. And I am going to use this color Kelly Green. I started out painting my leaf here, but it was a little too bright. Just to deepen it up a little bit, I added some black to my green paint, and it gave me a little bit darker green, which is what I was looking for. So right here was a little too dark, so I added in a little bit of that green, and then I was satisfied with the color. So don't be afraid to mix up colors. I mean, I've made some ugly colors, to be quite honest, and I just end up starting over, but just don't be afraid. It's not a big deal. So here I'm going to go ahead and start coating my leaves with the first coat. So once that first coat was dry, I went in with the lighter color green again and just added some right on top just to bring out some of the detail and add a little bit of dimension. So next I decide to stamp on the word lemonade, and this is where I mess up, but I do like to leave this in just to show that everything isn't always perfect and it's always fixable. So that's why I do leave these little mistakes in. So that sticky paper I'm using here, I actually picked it up at the Goodwill bins, but I do like that it has the grids on it, and I'm not sure where you can purchase this at. I'm thinking it is from Amazon, but I'm not too sure. So once I stamped the word lemonade on and I started putting my molds on, I realized that it was going downwards. And looking back on this video, it really wasn't that noticeable, but it was really bugging me, so I do end up painting right over it and re-stamping it. So to glue my molds on, I am going to use some Tite Bond. I do put some on with my finger just so I don't put too much on and it seeps from underneath my clay here. So that is why I prefer to use my finger. So using this sponge, I'm just going to go ahead and stipple some paint right over the word lemonade so I can re-stamp it. I did 2 coats of this, letting each coat dry in between. And using some truffle Waverly chalk paint, I just go in and dry brush on the very top of where the paint stops. Then I go back in with my Distress Oxide and go ahead and age the edges of the bottom of my board here, since I did paint over it. Then I just add the crackle stamp from IOD as well. And in my finished product, you will see that I did add another little swirl stamp from, I think, the Reverie stamps from IOD right underneath the leaves, just for an added detail. And the last project for this video is going to be this storage container. I actually have a small one and a larger one. They're a bit scratched up, so I decided to paint them. I'm going to go ahead and use the color Sandstone from Waverly Chalk Paint with some sea spray to add some texture. So for the first coat, I do go in pretty heavy with the paint just to create as much texture as I can. And I do end up doing 2 coats for each tin. So once my paint is dry, I'm going to go in with the color plaster, and I'm just going to go ahead and dry brush right over that. So when I dry brush, I do like to use these chip brushes. I just feel like they give more of a blended look when dry brushing. And I just dip it into my paint and take off the excess. And it just dry brushes enough to where it picks up the detail from the texture. Then along the edges and the bottom of my lid, I do go in with some Distress Oxide, as I always do. Then I'm going to go ahead and use the Reverie IOD stamp to add a little detail to the front. So using this ink from Hobby Lobby, I'm going to go ahead and ink up my stamp. So I went ahead and added this fabric underneath just so my storage bin doesn't roll around. So I'm going to go ahead and put my stamp down, holding it in place with one hand and using my other hand and just running my fingers right over to make sure my stamp touches my surface. So since the smaller container will sit on top of the larger one, I do want to add a little bit of detail on the large lid, just so when it's sitting on top, you can still see a little bit of detail around the edges, and I'm still using the Reverie IOD stamp. And for all these projects, I do take them outside and give them a coat of clear spray paint to protect the paint and the stamps. So that is it for today's video, guys. If you like what you see, please subscribe and follow for more. Thank you guys so much for being here. Follow me on TikTok and Instagram, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.